Donald Trump's tariffs war continues to hit global markets. European and Asian stocks are seeing further declines after opening on Friday as investors give their verdict on the U.S. president's huge trade shakeup. U.S. stocks have seen their biggest one-day drop since the start of the pandemic 5 years ago. The head of the International Monetary Fund says U.S. tariffs pose a significant risk to the global economy at a time when growth was already weak. President Trump has brushed off all the market turmoil, saying the U.S. economy will benefit in the long run from having more leverage with trading partners.
The tariffs give us great power to negotiate. Always have. I've used them very well in the first administration, as you saw, but now we're taking it to a whole new level because it's a worldwide situation, and it's very exciting to see.
Well, it's not just investors who are wondering how Trump's economic policies will affect their bottom line. Workers and business owners all around the world are wondering how they might be impacted by the sweeping changes in U.S. trade policy.
Canadian auto workers arriving for early shift just across the border from the United States. As President Trump's 25% tariff on imported vehicles took effect, Stellantis, one of the world's biggest car makers, announced it would close plants in Canada and Mexico.
I'm really angry. Not only me, the whole people, everybody in this plant is angry about what he's doing.
Around the world, people are worried about their economic future. Workers, business owners, investors. Vietnam, where many clothing companies set up shop after moving from China, was hit with some of the highest U.S. tariffs.
I'm worried. I can't eat or sleep well because I keep worrying about losing my job. How will I make a living to support my children?
One of EU member Spain's biggest exports to the U.S. is wine. The government is planning a multi-billion euro fund to help businesses expected to be negatively impacted by Trump's tariffs.
It's going to increase the price of our wines for the American consumer, so they might be buying less.
But even among people who aren't worried about how the U.S. tariffs will affect them, many can hardly believe how different things are under President Trump.
The America we used to know was open and was the protector of freedom in the world. Today, pretty much everything has changed. The tariffs will hurt everyone, and America too.
The new U.S. import taxes could affect people's livelihoods around the world. And for many of America's partners, they also come at the cost of goodwill.
DW reporter Clifford Coonan joins me in the studio with more. Clifford, we're already seeing some of the initial effects of Trump's tariffs. What should we watch out for now going forward?
Well, I'd like to be able to report today that people are sort of calmed down now and assessing what happened yesterday, but people, I think, are still reeling. So going forward, I think we're just going to have to see how people are going to cope with this. We had Japan's Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba describing it as a national crisis. As you mentioned, the markets are down. Nikkei index is down 4%. All of these things are happening. So going forward, countries are just going to have to work out a way to deal with it. But it's a bit like, it's almost like people are circling each other, seeing who's going to blink first, because we still don't really know what the tariffs are going to mean, whether this is a negotiation tactic or whether this is a fundamental ideological change in position by the US. So I think people are just trying to feel their way at the moment to see how they go forward with these tariffs.
And of course, we're seeing Trump introducing policies and then reversing them very quickly. So, we really don't know what's coming next. But, stock markets, it's a good measure, at least initially, of what's happening. The S&P 500 in the U.S. saw its biggest plunge since in a day since the year 2020. Do you think that trend is going to continue?
Well, Trump certainly thinks it won't. He said that there will be he expects there to be an interruption, a blip, but the markets are clearly, the way things are going, it looks like it could be a prolonged period. If you think of things that are coming down the pipeline for companies like Apple, say, one of the analysts yesterday was saying that an iPhone could end up costing around 2,500 euros, which is, these are the kind of shocks that consumers are going to have to deal with. These are bad for stocks. And ultimately, that's going to really feed into a period of perhaps prolonged disturbance on the stock markets.
Now, trade between nations, of course, is based on trust. How much reputational damage could these tariffs do to the U.S. in the world?
I think it's massive. I mean, it was well flagged. I mean, Trump has been saying this for a while, that something like this was coming down the pipeline, but it still came as a shock. And I think that it's done massive reputational damage. I think the people in longer term, even if there's a change of administration in the US, you're going to see people, no one's going to do long-term deals anymore with the US because they fear another change in administration could upend everything again. So I think we're going to see a complete rebalancing of trade in the world. I think it's the end of globalization as we know it. I'm not saying it's the end of globalization, but certainly global trade is going to change. You're going to see a lot more consolidation, and people are going to have to protect themselves against what possible changes they see in the US. So I think we're going to see a fundamental shift.
Clifford, thank you very much. Reporter Clifford Coonan.
Let's bring in Martin Braml. He's a trade economist at the University of Passau in Bavaria and a former research economist at the World Trade Association. He joins us now from Munich. Martin, welcome to the show. Now, China just announced it will retaliate with 34% tariffs on all U.S. imports. Is that the response Donald Trump was hoping for?
I think it was not the response that he was hoping for, but I think it was expected, and I can also expect that that other countries will follow that. So also the EU is preparing some retaliatory tariffs, and other countries will follow as well. I think the most important thing for all affected countries is now to cooperate and to coordinate their actions against the United States and to avoid any measures that indirectly affect European Union, China, Japan, and all other countries.
Responding in kind to these tariffs, as China is now doing, the European Union is apparently planning to do the same. In that opinion, is that the right strategy?
I think so, yes. Trump has escalated this trade war, and he has begun to impose tariffs. And now it is important also to create some damage for the U.S. economy immediately, that U.S. exporters in Republican states or businesses that have close ties to the White House administration also feel the consequences of this policy. And this, in the end, could give some room for negotiations to negotiate down all the tariffs that we have seen now.
Mm-hmm. Donald Trump actually has been signaling that he's very much open for business, saying that this is leverage for him to negotiate deals with, individual economic blocs or countries. How much scope do trading partners actually have to cut deals with the Trump administration, though?
No, I think they have a lot of negotiation power. When it comes to bilateral negotiations, then the US, as the world's largest economy, has always an advantage. So trade negotiations are, in fact, driven by market size. And the US natural advantage by being the largest economy is gone away at the moment when Trump initiated a trade war against the entire world. Now we have a situation that 75% of the world economy is against the United States and stands against the United States. So I think actually he lost a lot of bargaining power by that. I think the consequences for the US will be severe, and this in the end will also lead to negotiation. And at the end, there could be some liberalization. It is indeed true that the US has, among all industrial nations, the lowest tariffs, lower than the EU, lower than China and other countries. And for this very reason, it has also a certain logic to increase tariffs, but not on this scale and not on a permanent manner.
Mm-hmm. Let's look at the ripple effect of this, because there is already talk in the EU that the bloc may have to impose secondary tariffs on other countries, such as China, which may start sending more goods into the European market because it will become too expensive to export to the US. What would be the consequences for markets and consumers?
So this is really a problematic situation, and I hope the best that responsible leaders will find a way to avoid such secondary tariffs. trade diversion naturally happened. So goods produced in China that were on the way to the United States will now come to Europe. Also, European cars will maybe find their way to China. A response by lifting trade barriers everywhere could create a protectionist spiral, and in the end may even lead to a world recession that should be avoided. For consumers, actually, this trade diversion is not too bad because it leads to falling prices and a larger variety of products. So it's producers that are hurt.
That is economist Martin Braml. Many thanks.
Thank you.